Hey, what's up, everybody? Time for another game theory video. If you like the videos, like, sub, silly, comment, share, support the channel if you want to appreciate it, thanks. If you want to give me an early birthday present, shilling the link. Anyway, today I want to talk about, because sometimes I like doing these a little bit more bigger deep dives into moves, and I want to talk about more why Akuma's stand fucking roundhouse is such an example of the homogenization of games and why fighting games are just so terrible now and characters are just becoming more and more different shades of gray, right? And I have longer videos actually really going in depth about Ryu stand forward, stand Street Fighter Alpha, the hop kick, how the fireball became a poke, all this kind of stuff. But let's kind of show what I'm getting at here about why Akuma's stand roundhouse is such a great example of why fighting games are so bad nowadays, right? So I want you to remember, back in the day, I know it's crazy to think not every poke, not every attack hits you while you were ducking, okay? Shocking, I know. It's amazing to think. Did you know, and I've made videos talking about this before, did you know that even, it's crazy to think, you know Guile's Sabat kick? Did you know that Guile's Sabat kick, even though it would go over lows, it did not even hit you if you were ducking until super? And it wasn't until Super Turbo until you could actually like control it. Are you old enough to remember that? It seems like such a matter of fact now, but in the original Street Fighter 2, that's not how it worked actually. But anyway, okay. But the idea that not every attack hits you while you're ducking is not bad, because guess what? That's what makes characters different. You had characters that were more poking kind of characters. A character that had pokes that could hit you while you're ducking is almost, take with a grain of salt, something special about them. Kind of like a special move, let's say. They can actually walk forward while attacking you and you can't duck it. That is special. And if we think about that, why is that also important for a character like Ryu? Because if we think about the fireball being a poke, what is one of the reasons we think about the fireball as a poke? Because guess what? The fireball can actually hit you while you're ducking too, if you think about it, right? And again, I did a deep dive about this, about how you can actually see, if you go back in old Street Fighter, you can see the hurt box went from here in Street Fighter 2, right here, to in Championship Edition that went back here. So you could actually start trying to fireball limbs because he would pull back a little bit more, right? So, and that's also why I've talked about when you think about what people called footsies, because guess what? Ryu could not poke you. Ryu and Ken could not poke you like other characters. But guess what? They had this invincible duck short, let's say, because the hurt box, hitbox ratio was so good. We just called it priority back in the day. Don't be a fucking idiot. You know what we're saying, right? So it's because you could tap people's pokes when they're trying to poke you too, because it was just that powerful, right? However, as games progressed, we get to a game like Alpha and watch all those. Guess what? The hurt boxes and hit boxes on everything. Actually, it started in Super Turbo, but for sake of the video, right? The hurt boxes and hit boxes started getting worse. Fireball, he didn't pull back quite as much. So guess what they did to try to sort of progress the idea of Ryu in Street Fighter Alpha? Guess what? They gave him a hop kick. So now Ryu can sort of augment his traditional style of fireball is his only poke, quotation marks, only poke, right? His only poke while he checks you. He checks you with the, whatever. And of course, I should say, of course, you could sweep the other person, whatever, in footsies, but yeah, hopefully you get what I'm talking about, right? But they gave him a hop kick that could now poke, right? And they gave him this stand forward, which if you look at the hurt boxes right here, his leg doesn't have a hitbox even when he starts, right? So it allowed you to check moves in a different way, right? You see what I'm saying? But because of this, characters are going to start becoming a different shade of gray, right? Because now Ryu can poke you in ways that traditionally he could normally not. However, if you're thinking about a video game, right? You got to be like, well, we can't give Ryu everything, right? So of course, his fireball gets a little bit weaker. His dragon punch gets a little bit weaker, right? You see how characters are going to start becoming a little bit more similar, right? But these moves, you need to take great care, right? But now, look at a game we've progressed so far as a game like fucking Street Fighter. I was about to say Street Fighter 5, but you know, that's another story, but Street Fighter 6. Now, first of all, this is extremely fucking visually deceptive. Let me just fucking say, right? We've gone from attacks that are literally hop kick, he is going downwards, right? It's a downward trajectory, right? We can fathom why it would hit you while you're ducking. He's doing an axe kick. We can fathom while it's hitting you, right? It's intuitive. It makes sense, I think you could say, right? Now we have attacks that are just straight up blasting off into the sky that hit you ducking. Do you see how this is it changes how footsies are, right? We've gone from Ryu in footsies, he's checking you. He's trying to fireball, and of course, you know, the occasional I'll sweep your sweep if you try to, you know, when we get these footsie battles, right? But Ryu didn't have these Shotos, I should say. These Shoto characters, you know, didn't have these sort of traditional poking ways or that they could attack the opponent, right? Now we can play footsies. Do you realize what I'm getting at here? Do you realize this is, for all intensive purposes, this is a fucking hop kick? I mean, I've showed Street Fighter 6. I said it's one of the biggest problems right when I saw the game. I'm like, why does standing jabs, every character standing jab hits you while you're ducking? And I talked about Ken's stand fierce. I'm like, why the fuck do we have a character like Ken, who one of the main different things that used to be between him and Ryu, right, that made them not so many different shades of gray, is Ken had his stand roundhouse. That's a stand roundhouse, believe me. That could hit you ducking. And I'm like, well, now that he has a fucking stand fierce that hits you ducking, and you can cancel the stand fierce, why would you not usually use the stand fierce? And if you watch any match of fucking Street Fighter 6, guess what? You don't see stand roundhouse as much because it's not as special. Even though it actually looks like it's hitting you, and stand fierce doesn't look like it's hitting you, you see stand fierce more because it's more versatile. It, in fact, is a move that can beat lows now because you cannot duck it. Akuma, people on they made this big whoop-de-doo. Oh, well, you know, you can actually duck the second hit, so it's not going to be that good. Oh my God, God forbid you can duck the second hit. God forbid the move doesn't just automatically win you the match. God forbid there's a few moves in the game that you cannot duck. Oh my God, please. You know what I mean? Just crazy. So, excuse me. But the fact that you can duck the second hit, what does that matter if you're to think about a video game from the perspective of you don't do moves to not hit, generally speaking? I would say, generally, when you're playing a video game, you're not doing a move to not hit. Now there is the idea that, you know, you could be whiffing a move, you know, to potentially check the opponent or to gain meter. But if we're to be thinking about this move as a hop kick, guess what? Is he not at a distance here and his foot is going over his head where you would do a hop kick and it hits his low, even though he's not even fucking touching him, right? I made that video even about Street Fighter 6 as well. I'm like, the ranges that Ryu's hop kick wins in Street Fighter 6, you're so far away that you don't actually get, you know, because Street Fighter 6 has two different counters, right? It's like a punish counter and a counter, whatever it is. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. Regular counter and punish counter. Is that what the fuck they call it, right? But to get these kind of punish counters where you actually get the good damage off the hop kick, it's not realistic as much because you're not using a hop kick right in the opponent's, going up the opponent's butthole. You know? You're using a hop kick more at this range because this is where the opponent would be trying to maybe hit you with the low, right? But from these distances where a character might be hitting you with the low, you can also, at many of these ranges, check it with a safe attack, right? That also gets you more damage, right? Do you get what I'm kind of getting at? And this isn't to say that, oh, no one's ever going to miss Akuma's stand roundhouse or something like that. That's not me trying to say it's never going to happen. But can you see how the move is basically a fucking hop kick? Even though he doesn't touch the guy. And he gets more damage off it than he should. Because it forces stand. Forces stand implies that he's ducking. You fucking retard. Oh, but you can duck the second hit. But the first hit does force stand. Forcing stand implies that it hits the opponent ducking. All right, do we both speak the same fucking language? You're not. I'm assuming if you're using the move in footsies, it is to beat a low attack. Again, not saying it's never, not saying that people are always going to hit it or some shit like that. Someone's going to misconstrue what I'm saying. But you get what I'm getting at? Like, look at how footsies have evolved. And this is why characters become more and more homogenized. Because you cannot give a Shoto character a fucking attack like this, a poke like this, that gets you this much damage and can keep their traditional aspects of them, right? They can't always have the best fireballs. They can't always have the best dragon punches. They can't have this, and they can't have the best fucking pokes too, because it makes no sense. That's why I say this is one of the dangers of progression, and I've made so many videos about this before, about why the hop kick is one of the most, it must be treated so gently, so precisely, because it is such a clusterfuck of a move to put into Ryu's toolkit if you want to keep them with their traditional strengths, right? Because these characters shouldn't have that from a certain perspective. This isn't to say that if I was making a Street Fighter, I wouldn't have a hop kick or anything like that, because I think it's fun. I even think that the forward is actually, like I said, it's serendipitously a very interesting move, especially if you think about old school Street Fighter in terms of whiffing a stand short to pull back in a footsie battle and then sweep the guy. This kind of functions as both in a weird kind of way, sort of, you know, from a certain perspective, right? But anyway, hopefully you get what I'm getting at. Akuma stand roundhouse really shows what the fuck is going on with fucking Street Fighter, dude. You know, how unintuitive it is. You know, it's terrible. Like, would it really have killed them to just make the first attack actually look like it's hitting the guy? You know, it visually bothers me. And it just is, oh God, my fucking brain, dude. It just shows what's becoming a Street Fighter. Not every move should hit you ducking. When every move fucking hits you ducking, you can see what's going on with fucking Street Fighter, dude. I mean, this is where we fucking are, man, you know? So, and again, that's not to say that fighting games shouldn't progress. You know, it's a danger of progression, and it needs to be treated more, you know, with more care. I guess gently is not the correct word. These things just aren't treated with care. That's not to say that I don't think Akuma should have a stand roundhouse that you can't combo off of. I think it's fun, but you know, if I was making it, guess what? This wouldn't work versus a normal character. The only character would hit ducking is if it was a fat character or a big character, or for at least fuck, dude. At least make it you're right up in his junk, so I can theoretically assume that the knee is hitting fucking Ryu's head instead of using it at a range where you would normally use a fucking hop kick and it still wins. That's fucking retarded. Anyway. Remember, if you like the videos, like, subscribe, comment, share, support the channel. I appreciate it. Thanks. I'm shilling it. Do you want to give me a birthday present? It's early. Support the channel, or, you know, call out some of these fucking haters that lie about me. These motherfuckers, they don't do anything in fucking games. Not legitimately, at least, right? Just ridiculous. Anyway. The end.